Hey everybody. Hello, hello. Okay, so let's do this thing, shall we? So day 3, practical necromancy for speaking with the dead, for modern day working with things like the Goetia and things like the Lesser Key of Solomon or the Ars Almadel and all these other different ancient grimoires that summon up spirits from the underworld in order to press them into service, right? Now, the thing I'm going to say is that my methods vary from the ancient books. I don't use the holy angels to force the infernal angels to come to my service. The way that I do it and the way that I work with the energies is, again, because of a variation of what's occurred in my life. There was a period of darkness, I will say, when I had to learn how to defend myself against energies and people and things that were of a darker nature. Now, there are people out there that are sick, twisted, evil, like fucking evil, and they're dangerous. And working with spirits of the clip-off, I got first-hand experience in the preservation properties provided by spirits to engender connection to the other side of the tree of life. Now, for many people, they're like, oh, edgy demons, bad. No, they kept me alive. They kept me safe. They kept me protected when I needed them most. So, to that end, I've dedicated myself to doing rites of redemption, elevations, purifications, so that those that are in darkness can find the light. And to that end, what I'm going to talk about next is Luciferian, because it deals with Lucifer specifically, but it deals with him in the aspect before the fall, before he was cast out, when he was still the servant of heaven, right? So Lucifer is the light bringer, but is Venus the morning star, right? So Friday is the day of Venus, so the spell was done on Friday. And that being the ruling entity, according to the books and the grimoires, the Lucifer is the ruling angel, but he has 4 sub-spirits. Sarabotos, Sarabotes, Hagiel, Hagiel, Ganiel, Ganiel, and Rocael. Now, the 4 names are the divisionary sub-spirits, okay? Those are aspects of Venus that are, again, in the books. And understanding the Kabbalah or Klipothic properties is that every letter has a power behind it. So in this case, I'm using the spell that I used for one of my clients and one of my longer-term students. S in this case is related to Pisces and Neptune. A is Saturn in the air. R is Aquarius and Saturn. A, again, is Saturn in the air. B is the Mercury and Moon. O is Sagittarius and Jupiter. T is fire and the sun. E is for Mars and Aries. S is for Pisces and Neptune. H is for Cancer and the moon. A again is Saturn in the air. G is for Gemini and Mercury. The I is for Leo and the sun. E is for Aries and Mars. L is for Libra and Venus. G is for Gemini and Mercury. A is for Saturn in the air. N is for Scorpio and Pluto. I is Leo and the sun. E is Aries and Mars. L is Libra and Venus. R is the moon in Aquarius. O is Jupiter and Sagittarius. C is Pisces and the moon. A is air and Saturn. And E is Jupiter and Aries, with L being Libra and Venus. Now, because of what the spirit was that I was summoning, I used sweet musk. I used the musk, amber, wood aloe, dried roses, and red coral to form the base of the blend of summoning. Now, when you're making spirit totems, so in a jar, much like this. You would fill it up with the ground down version of all of the herbs that relate to those planets I just listed off. So that way, not only do you have the connection to those spirits, but you're including them in the blend that you're building. So that way, when those energies come down, when you put them on the array that you've built, you've given them a place inside the vessel to hold on to. And it's not just the shapes and the sigils, it's the ingredients that go into it. You know, and when you break it down, you know, into your parts, like how many parts of Saturn, how many parts of air, how many parts for all the different ingredients, right? Those become your spell blend. Those become what you use to do your summoning. And so for A, I used pine. For N, I used black nightshade. I used for E, and anything for E was agrimony and nettle in equal measure because it's of what it and how it works. L is for Libra, but I used hibiscus for that one. S, I used poppy. Again, A was for pine. C is for poppy. I is for cinnamon. E is for agrimony and dragon's blood in this case because it was a different spirit that I was working with, so I wanted to get that masculine reflection, but I also wanted to have the feminine reflection. So that's why I used the nettle earlier with the dragon's blood. I used hibiscus, blue lotus, sassafras, cinquefoil, hibiscus again, because again, it's however many times that the ingredients repeat themselves. Is how many times you want to actually include them as your parts per measure. So if you've got a letter or a name that you're going to summon and it's got repeating vowels or repeating consonants within it, double up those ingredients because that forms the base of your blend. So you can go through and like I used the Black Magic of the Shah Hamem-Farash by Aeon Sophia, is the publishing company that came out in 2016. Really good book for that. And then on the outer part of the urn, which I've shown pictures of in the group, so those are available to look at, there are the vials, one for each of the spirits that are supplemental to Venus, supplemental to the rulership of Lucifer, so that on each one, all of them are in the ink of Venus. They're made with the extract or the tincture blend from those herbs in combination that make up those names. So for every name, they get a bottle of ink. That bottle of ink gets written out in the sigils on a piece of virgin parchment. Now, what do I mean by virgin parchment? So I mean, I used a bookbindery supply and I got actual goatskin parchment. Never been used. Oopsies. Camera's doing weird things. So with that being said, what we have is a viable piece of conjure that is like the old ways. So that way, you're incorporating something that is been alive. It's something that is not currently living, because but it had been at one point. So that as you go through and as you develop your connection to the spirits, you're giving them some element of life that was, right? And so because you've got the blood on the array that is yours to open the gate, you've paid the price to crack the gates between life and death. You've given the vital blood, you've given a piece of you for this, right? In this case, it was the blood for that moment. It's not sacrificial magic in the terms of something has to die to get your work done. You don't have to feed a chicken to it. You're not doing that kind of work with this type of energy. But what you are doing is you are bringing something that was not fully formed and you're bringing it back. You're giving it life again. And so once you get the urn and you put it on the array, you make the conjuration. Now, when you're conjuring up the spirits, if you're not going to be using the classical "by Jesus Christ I compel you," and by all of the holy names, you have to have something that will cross the veil. I used "Lord of the East, Spirit of Venus, allow the path of the eight to bring forth that road whose angle prepares the way," when I put it on the array. It was in the east at dawn on a Friday. Now, the thing is, you do want to line it up when you're doing these types of conjurations, just because of the simple fact that making sure that those roads of energy lead to your spell's anchor. Now, when you're using the planetary vessels, if you happen to have the planetary anchors like I also use, it just further augments, because what you're doing is when you use time as a base, it actually creates that point here to that point over here, and you're giving it a line of energy to call down through. So you're creating a through line of energy. So it's not just an intangible reason. It's coming down on one of the angles of heaven, so that we're in a sphere connecting to another one. It's generating that line of energy, so it gives that path on which the spirit can walk. So that way, as you make that conjuration, there it comes, right? And so as you're doing these things, as you're connecting to this, you go through and you figure out, okay, what is it that's in me that's most like the spirit that I'm working with? And at the time, it was for the conjuration of Zipar, like I said, for one of my clients. And he was trying to compel love in a partner. And the thing is, the way that he was using it for about 2 years was corrupting it. And the way that it was being corrupted is because when you use a spirit, you don't want to focus your intent on a specific target of its reflection. Like, you don't want to aim at a specific person when you're using a spirit. It's different than using a spell. Using the spirit to bring you the type of energy of the type of lover that you want, to bring you the type of energy of the connection to that person that you want. That's perfectly acceptable. When you target a specific individual and they're in a relationship with someone else, there's kids involved, it becomes a mess. Don't do it. Because what happens is the energy will build and it will build and it will build, and it will also cycle back through. So once it can't burst, you might have a sexual relationship with that individual, but it also corrupts the relationship you have with them, because then you're the cheating hoe bag, and nobody wants that. And the thing is, after purification that he went through to purify himself and the spirit to walk the path of truth, it reshifted all that energy, and he's been able to have much better results working with this spirit. So now it brings to him exactly what it needs to be, and it doesn't need the tether of the urn, because he's not corrupting it. I brought it to the world for him, and he's been honoring it and elevating it and allowing it to just be in his vicinity to help facilitate those changes that he needed to go through as an individual. So when you're focusing on drawing in specific spirits from either the books or from your connection to the dead or the graves or whatever it is, you're able to bring these things through, but you're able to do it in a way that doesn't corrupt, doesn't violate the nature of you, doesn't violate the nature of the people that are around you, doesn't violate the nature of the spirit, because it allows for the freedom of energy, and it allows for the flow through, so that it finds the right connection point, so it finds the right connectors. So that if the people that are meant kind of similar to what you want, they'll be brought in along with everybody else that's not quite there yet. But as you go through and you test those interactions, as you see how those people go through life, and if that's something that you can identify with as you do that, and as you elevate the spirit and you maintain on the Friday or on the Tuesday, depending on what it is you're up to, or however it breaks down to which day you offer to what this aspect of the spirits, etc., you give that elevation to them. so that it provides them and it provides you routine. It gives you a reason to do better, work harder, become more connected to nature, become more connected to the spirit that you put in the vessel, becoming more elevated as an individual who understands that when they do work, when they bring intangible energies into this planet to do work with them, it's a tandem thing. They are a familiar energy. They are a friend that you work with. They are not a slave to be compelled by a higher deity. That's not how it works. The best relationships with spirits are the ones that you have that are elevating and are beneficial, that you don't have to worry about getting possessed. You don't have to worry about, because at the end of the day, we're all spirits. We're just having a flesh experience. When you have your 70 years, 100 years as life, the thing that's inside you, that connection of unity to the Creator, to the creation of all things, right? Might be on this world, it might be on some world far off in the distant galaxy somewhere. That's okay. When you die here, you begin a new life, right? So what you're doing is you're calling out from nature, from the hive mind of creation. You're recalling those energies to the form that you are giving it. So you're not corrupting it. So that everything that you intend to do and everything that you intend to put into your vessel, once it goes on that array, everything is built out accordingly so that nothing is wasted. There is no opportunity for anything that isn't exactly what you want to be in exactly where you place it. Now, using things like ceramics versus things like metal, using versus things like different metals, right? Like when you're conjuring spirits of Venus, use brass or gold because it's the spirit of Venus. Well, actually use brass specifically. You could use bronze, but it's got the other elements in there, so it's real. It'll do a little bit more. But stick with brass if it's going to be specifically for Venus. Stick with iron if you're doing stuff with Mars. Yeah, you will need to find a little gold box or something that you can put the spirit totem in or the tinctures in, because you can make the tinctures and then you can put them on the talismans and then stick them inside of something gold if you're working on the sun, or something silver for the moon, right? So tin would be for Jupiter, lead would be for Saturn, and for Mercury you can use aluminum. Actually, works out pretty good. But either way, put some actual mercury in there, liquid metal mercury, to maintain consistency and authenticity towards the ancient practices. Pewter works if it's been softened with mercury or lead. But again, be very careful when you're doing these things because that sort of thing can cause liver failure, brain damage, and all sorts of other problems. So be cautious on how you approach that particular aspect of things. So as we go into dealing with what it is that you're going to do today as part of your challenge and as part of the connection is building out a spirit urn. You've got the array already done. You've already created a gateway through which these things go. And if you're ready to keep that spirit and that energy around and it's something that you want to work with, then what you can do is you can put a little piece of, in another one that I can't show on camera, is it's got rabbit skin so that the spirit can ride the rabbit from one plane to another. It's got a crystal in there. It's got the herbal blends for anchoring that particular spirit, and it's got some of the supplemental stones that are like the fulgurite. It's got a piece of meteorite in there. It's got a piece of Libyan desert glass and moldavite. All of the stones of transformation, stuff that has aspects of transmutation that have already occurred on the physical plane to that ingredient, right? It's the stuff that when nature hits the earth, fulgurite is created. When the meteorites hit the earth, the glasses or the moldavite was created. Meteorites is the space rocks that actually hit the earth. The the desert glass was when the sun got so hot or something got so hot that it was able to turn the desert sand to glass. If you want to get extra crazy, you can go track down Trinitite, which is when the man's action split the atom. That's the stone that was created after the nuclear blast. I do use that in some of those, in some higher level stuff that I get up to. But be careful of the radiation, because that shit is no joke. So do be careful with what you get up to. Last thing you want to do is melt yourself into a puddle of goo. But the important thing is, when you're making a spirit totem, you place it on your altar. You place it high up. Like mine are at the top shelf up over here. You've seen some of those in some of the other videos if you look at the backgrounds. But what those do is it gives honor. You work it from the floor up. You build up the spirit. You build up your relationship to it. So that way, as you go through and as you're working with these relationships and as you're cultivating the intangible aspect of what in you is like that thing you're summoning, and as you give it a place in your home, that you give it water, you give it a candle, you give it light, you give it elevation, you give it an offering regularly. So that way you're giving your energy, you're giving vital substance to the thing that you're creating. So that way it has more density, it has more presence. Now, these things protect you. These things will defend you against other malevolence. So the more you get into the relationship with it, the more equal your relationship is with the thing you intend to bring into your house, the less you have to worry about the crap that comes from other people doing nasty shit to you. Right? Because it provides a barrier of defense. Now, sad story time. When you do work and you start working with the cemeteries and you start pulling in energies from kids or from the innocent dead or people that were tortured or people that were murdered, right? Which is a thing that they do in the ATR traditions. It's a way to bind pain or to bind murder or death or corruption or whatever it is to individuals. They can make that spirit possess somebody. That is possible to do. I don't condone that kind of work whatsoever because it engenders more pain than it elevates or purifies. Like I said in the beginning of this, that this is about elevation of the spirits. It's about purifying them from that corruption so that way when you work with them, you're working with a friend, you're not working with a slave. And even if it is a slave, under the conditions of the spell, it's doing something for you, but it's also getting something from you. So what's it getting from you is it's getting light, it's getting water, it's getting elevation, it's getting the relationship. It's getting a bond outside of the intangible mind where it was when it was stuck in a life or an existence of corruption, pain, sorrow, horror, etc. If you bring that to this plane and you carry over that horror, that hardship, that despair, right? You were doing no service to that spirit. You were doing no service to you. You were doing no service to anybody that lives in this planet in this time. So what happens is that those spirits, you can catch them and you can turn them against the people that conjure them. Generally, when that happens, those people die. And I'm not joking. I've seen it happen. Their house burns down with them inside. Straight up. Like, this shit is not a game, folks. When you do spirit work, when you bring things into this plane, I've given you the means, I've given you the methods, right? And we're going to go through the planetary relationship to each one of the letters of the alphabet so that way you can understand what energies that you should pull from when you are connecting to those powers, so that as you do this thing, you are able to responsibly connect with these spirits. Okay? So this stuff is not for people that are looking to corrupt the relationship between the other world and this world. This is for people that are looking to connect on the most intimate levels, giving of themselves, giving something else the opportunity to come back to be of service, to be of use to an individual, to bring, in this case, it was to bring the love that they need, while elevating the other energies to it. So, if I seem like I'm pissed off at the people that have abused the spirits, I absolutely am. You know, there needs to be a change in the way that interactions with spirits occur, because they are just as tangible as the living. The intelligences, the jinn, they're all entities, they're all life, they all have applications of this world. They're necessary. They're not evil. It's when the corruption occurs, that's when the evil comes. It's when you focus specifically on two people that have no business being together and you try to force the arrangement. That's not going to work out good for anybody. So, A is related to Saturn and the air. B is the moon and Mercury. C is Pisces and the moon. D is Jupiter and Venus. E is Jupiter and Aries. So F is Mercury and Taurus. G is Venus, Gemini, and Mercury. H is Cancer. I is Leo and the Sun. J is Virgo. K is Mars and Jupiter. L is Libra and Venus. M is Saturn and water. N is Scorpio. O is Sagittarius. P is Venus in Capricorn. Q is Gemini and Mars. R is Moon in Aquarius. S is Pisces. T is Leo and fire. U is Taurus and fire. V is Taurus and Saturn, the earth. W is the fire of the earth. X is the water of the earth. Y is the air of the earth. And Z is the earth of the earth. And so when you go through and you look for those arrangements, you can look at the back of Cunningham's book of Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs. He lists them out by planets. You can look at Peter Barrell's herbal books. Every herbal book, every herbal formulary connects different herbs to different planets. So when you go through and you're using that understanding that the name of the spirit that you're going to summon corresponds to a group of planetary energies, that when you put those ingredients to that arrangement, you get that energy. So when you're conjuring those spirits, like even if you go through the 50 spirits of Marduk from the back of the Necronomicon, right? There's the word of its summons and there's the name. You can go through and the name matches up to the principles and the properties of all of those collected behaviors of the planetary energies in that spirit, in that time, so that you can specifically make what it is you want to conjure. So if you know the name of somebody who died on this planet, who was alive at one point, you can go through and you can get the herbs of their name. And you can put them in an urn, and you can elevate them specifically. So if you have their name, you can specifically find the ingredients that relate to each one of the planets corresponding to each one of the letters. And then you can go back through and you can make the sigil of their summons by connecting the 1 through 9 on the planetary square that represents the day of the birth of that individual. You put together an ink that represents the planetary relationship, the astrological relationship to that individual. So that way, when they came through the gate at birth, when you have the same ingredient construct giving them the place and the body, you're able to put them in a place of elevation so that you bring them back. You can work with them and you can create relationships with them. So they may not be alive anymore, but you can still do it. It works with pets. It works with dead people that you loved, that you want to bring back. It works with the spirits of the Goetia, or like I said, you can use the Necronomicon if you want to. You can use fiction books. Whatever construct of a name that you can identify, When you put syllables together, yang sounds is the consonants, yin sounds is the soft, subtle spirit of the word behind it. Depending on how you put the vowels with the consonants, depends on what the relationship is and the spirit that comes as a result. So please use this to build out your urns, to build out a path of practice where you can engender a relationship to those spirits, so that way as you work with the spirits, as you bring them to this plane, you have all of the ingredients necessary in which to do so safely. So that's what I give you for today as your homework assignment, is to begin building an urn, is to begin building the placement, so that way when we go through this tomorrow and I demonstrate the ritual setup of what to do when you conjure everything out, giving the animation spell, giving out the purification depending on what it is that you're going to be summoning from. If it's a fallen spirit and you need to restore it, so that way by when it comes to life in that vessel, in that form, you have the means by which to do so. So this isn't stuff that's, like I said, this isn't stuff that's classically acceptable. This is stuff that I've been doing professionally for years. I know it works. I've seen the benefits of this in my clients. I've seen the benefits of this in my own life and my friends' lives. So please use this stuff responsibly, my friends. So we can change not only the world of the living, but we can change the world of the dead, so that way when we need to ask it questions, we bring it into the urn, we have the array, we can ask it questions with the dowsing rods, we can ask it questions with the pendulum, we can throw cards, or we can have a conversation with it. We can light a divinatory candle, so that way we can watch if it's and what it's saying. Not if it's saying, what it's saying, how it's saying it, depending on the way that the wax flows, depending on the way that the wax puddles, depending on which direction that goes. You can divine all of that from a burning candle. So that way when you are in these spaces, when you're working with these energies, you know exactly what it is you're up to, and you know exactly how to do it. So that way nothing gets out of whack, no corruption occurs in you and the spirit and the work that you're doing. Because it's all very intentional. You have constructed it from the ground up to be the perfect embodiment for that spirit, so that you can serve and it can serve. And so that way everybody can be of service to the goal that that energy comes together and produces. So thank you for undertaking this challenge. Thank you for going through and watching this and taking to heart what I have to say. Until tomorrow, my friends, stay safe.